delighted to have with me this afternoon Catharina Van Delden, an old friend and CEO of an organization called Innosabi, of which she was also a founder. And basically, Innosabi has grown from a startup to being a very successful player in the innovation space, particularly working in the field of agile innovation. So I was fascinated to see when she recently published a book with some colleagues on agile innovation called Connect the Dots, and a very appropriate title. And I thought I have to try and talk with her a little about what's inside. So Catharina, thank you so much for coming and welcome. Perhaps I could start with a fairly basic question. Why write a book?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to chat about one of my favorite topics, about what we've written about in the book. And you're right, if you run a software company, it's not the first obvious idea to write a book. But honestly, I feel that in our digital world, that makes it especially interesting to have a tangible object, that also looks pretty and it's on your desk. But our goal in writing it was really to kind of reflect on the experiences, on the learnings from the last couple of years, because we've seen that so many factors in innovation management really have changed. And when we started the company 10 years ago, the talk was mainly about, let's say, user integration, about customer co-creation. And now it's so much more, it's so much bigger. We talk about data in innovation processes, we talk about ecosystems, we talk about connections, we talk about digitalization as a general business kind of environment. And so I feel that today's business strategies as such are really it's digital and it's innovation. And it's such a core of modern business strategies that really said, okay, now it's the time to reflect on what has changed in a couple of years and to put it in a form that sparks conversations, because that's what we really want to do as an organization. We want to build our own innovation ecosystem. We want to really be an active part, an active sparring partner, and spark conversations. So the book is actually one thing that does that, and best proof is that we're talking today. Absolutely,
it's great. You're right. We hear a lot these days about this word agile. It sort of creeps into so much of the discourse. Sometimes it does sort of suggest, along with so much of the innovation talking, it's just about doing things faster. It's pressing the accelerator pedal right to the floor. Perhaps you could elaborate a little on why it's not and what it is. Why is agile so important?
Yes. Actually, even though we say we talk about agile innovations and it's even part of the title, I'm a bit tired of the word. I think that happens with all the words that become buzzwords in our business talk, and kind of starts to be used in so many different ways, and kind of just to but often prohibit to think about what it actually means. So what I really like is to go back to where the word comes from, and it's really from the Agile Manifesto that was written by people from the software world to kind of explain how new ways of project planning in that case could be done to reach not only more speed but also to be closer to customer needs, to foster also culture of innovation amongst teams and to have very successful collaboration. So it's really true on so many different levels. And what I feel is that if we take it from there, we see that it's really about abandoning process-heavy, activity-oriented planning and replacing it with frequent re-elevation, adjustment of plans, quick reactions to changes, and to make work visible, to give team responsibility. So it's a kind of a very holistic approach that just the one buzzword agile really doesn't catch. But if you dig it a bit deeper into the methodology, you kind of see how powerful it is and that it's worth enduring, that it's a buzzword.
That's great. But as you know, I'm fascinated by innovation management, and I'm afraid one of the sentences in your book really caught my eye, because you said agile is the next evolutionary step in innovation management. So I've got this picture, like the old Charles Darwin picture of the apes and so on, gradually getting upright and then walking and doing stuff. So yes, there's an evolutionary thing, but could you explain that a little more? And why has it taken us so long to get to standing up, Homo erectus?
I like that picture. It's really, and it's actually describing quite well what I experience as well. Because in the last, well, I've been in, in this context of innovation management only for the last 10 years, not as you've seen quite a lot more in terms of the development. But what I've seen is that historically innovation management has been very much in the corner of a creative only process, let's say. So you would probably have a workshop and, I don't know, dance your ideas, and which is great. And then came all the kind of focus on customer integration, on lead users, on design thinking, really to take on the perspective of, needs first. What kind of problem am I solving? Who am I developing for? But it was still, in all this realization, for me, it was a rather isolated process that didn't have so much to do with the rest of the organization teams. And at the same time, it was a very manual process. You had workshops, you put Post-it. The Post-it is kind of, the symbol of this innovation process, And you put Post-its on the wall, and then maybe you had some PowerPoints afterwards. And what has changed as a general setting is just that digital has become such an important success factor in today's business world, and really has been driving business strategies and allowing us to connect, to reach out, to look for data. And this is, I think, what has happened, what has driven the development in innovation management towards agile innovation. This possibility to reach out in your whole ecosystem to, we say, obviously, the brightest minds with the best ideas, to actually find them. Could be that they're part of, that they're a startup you've been working with, or they're a supplier or a customer, or even an employee that you were not aware of before that had these ideas. And to be able to connect them in a completely new, different way, and to integrate them into the conversation. And at the same time, fuel that with data that might not have been visible before. Did our company maybe file a patent? Did somebody a couple of years ago in the continuous improvement process worked on that topic? Maybe there's somebody in a completely different country who is an expert on it, who I could connect with. And to combine this, to really have, on the one hand, digital collaboration, and on the other hand, to find relevant data. I think this has only become possible due to digitalization. And to answer your question more quickly, this is for me the number one change that has happened that enabled us to look at innovation processes in this way now.
That's fascinating. And one of the other things I wanted to probe with you a little, I'll put the book up again, but the other part of the title is it's Agile Innovation and Collaborative Ecosystems. Now, that is another word we hear a lot about, ecosystems. But you place a lot of emphasis on bringing different players together, and indeed not just inside organizations. So I wonder if you could comment a little on the challenges of actually getting people together. After all, we've always heard we should get stakeholders to participate in innovation. But what are the challenges to actually making that happen and enabling more effective innovation as a result?
Yeah. Well, the underlying belief, and which I, from the very bottom of my heart, believe to be true, is that innovation happens when you kind of cross different angles, different perspective, different experiences, and so that from existing experiences can spark something new. And this is why we talk about collaborating also with externals, with people who you didn't know before, into finding them. And if you talk about what's kind of the foundation to make it possible, it's a certain type of, well, one could say company culture, but I would prefer to say on how we view humans and how we treat each other. Because you have to say goodbye to the thinking that only the person who has a certain job description is allowed to have a good idea, and the others might not have the competence, or might not, be eligible and not be worth listening to. But in order to really work in an ecosystem, every single one needs to acknowledge that other people can have good ideas, should be heard for it, should be respected for it, and should be taken into the conversation. And this is actually something that I, on a personal level, really appreciate and like, is that this approach, which becomes more and more dominant in our business world, really comes along with a completely new world view on how we respect each other as human beings. And this is what I really like.
It's a lovely philosophy, and I also very much subscribe to it. One of the places where we've actually seen, thankfully, these principles really playing out is in our response to this awful pandemic. Because although it is an absolute tragedy, what it has also done is galvanize our approach to innovation in very different ways. So early on, we saw an incredible collaboration to come up with protective equipment and ventilators, and indeed the whole business of creating vaccines from a zero base so fast. This is all about collaborative innovation. And it's, for me, one of the lessons we might take. My fear is that when, hopefully, the pandemic's over, we might lapse back to innovation as usual. I wonder if you could comment a bit about that. First of all, on whether you've seen real ecosystem collaboration in the crisis, and how we might prevent ourselves slipping back when this is over.
Yes, I 100% agree. I've seen a very similar movement, and I obviously from the background I'm coming from. So, for example, the Munich Re with the Fraunhofer Institute had a challenge that was called Give a Breath Challenge, and they asked for 3D printable designs for ventilators from all over the world, and was a huge participation of different companies with knowledge in 3D printing, with student teams with ideas. So it was an incredible worldwide collaboration, and this is just one initiative of so many we've seen that really showcase collaboration and innovation. And I'm actually quite optimistic, because I do believe that no company will go back to business as usual after this experience, just because they have experienced so many benefits, and also because employees have become used to the benefits of working from home, of using digital tools, and they have seen the success of innovation initiatives like these. So, success stories are always the best driver for change. If you've seen that's been successful during the pandemic, you will continue to do it. And on a different level, actually, if you want to change something in your life, it's said that your brain needs 6 weeks to adapt to it. So let's say you want to change your diet, you want to exercise more, you want to quit smoking. Basically, after 6 weeks, your neurons are adapted, to that change, and it becomes the new normal. And while with the pandemic and our collaborative behavior, we are way beyond 6 weeks. So I have hope from that side as well, that it sticks, and that we're actually able to use this approach to innovation to tackle all the other so important issues that we face today, like climate change, like education throughout the world, like really equal chances for everybody. So I believe there's so many issues we as a society we can use these approaches to solve them.
Yeah, I share that entirely. I guess a question that goes right back to my beginnings in this innovation field. When I was first working as an engineer, looking at how innovation happened, I was struck by how much inside a medium-sized company, the whole was less than the sum of the parts. We had all these smart people working in research and development and engineering and so on, all ostensibly trying to innovate together to create something. And in fact, they spend a lot of their time fighting each other, politics and so on. So the whole was less than the sum of the parts. Now, in a sense, the manifesto in your book and everything you've said is all about it could be greater than the sum of the parts, these collaborative ecosystems. You've worked with large organizations, people like Siemens, and that's, for me, an interesting playground to try these ideas out on, because they are large organizations with all those internal tensions. How do you change a culture to be as collaborative as you're suggesting?
Well, obviously, as a founder of the software company, you'll tend to say, well, just use my software and you'll be fine. But no. Well, I believe if you, a tool does help, that's obviously, but it will never be really the core driver of change. But it's really more, company culture is really about the underlying beliefs and the values and that shape the behavior, So in order to achieve that, the most important thing in my point of view is to have a clearly communicated vision, a clearly communicated mission, and a leadership style that reflects the intended change. If you want more collaboration, but we continue to have a leadership style that is extremely hierarchical, that is not humble. I believe humble leadership is really one of the core drivers to enable collaboration. that change will not happen, if the leadership style doesn't reflect it. So with that in mind, of course, you need modern ways of communicating and making your vision, mission, and leadership style known. But without having it in place in the first way, it will not change.
Yeah. Now, we first met when you were just starting out a company. Here you are 10 years on with a very successful company, much bigger than the startup. I was very struck in the book, in the last section, how much you describe this journey, your personal journey, and how you've been trying to live the agile values, if we can call them that, walking the talk. Could you just comment a little on that? How in the building up of your own very successful business on innovation, agile's been important?
Yes, it has always been, but to be honest, it has never been a conscious decision. It was more that, we started off as students. To be honest, we didn't have a penny. We didn't really know much. We didn't know many people. We didn't have a product. So we really started off just with the idea. And I think this was about the time when we met the first time. And what we did is then, we sought conversations like people with you, like you, and from these conversations, we started to learn and to iterate, and then we kind of started to try out approaches. What does stick? What's the need in the market? What can we sell? What problem are we solving that actually companies are willing to pay for? And from that mentality, from not knowing anything in the first place, and then through experimenting and conversations, learning and pivoting our model, really came a culture that we today call always in beta, because it never assumes that we actually know how things are done, but that we constantly have to learn and to adapt and to kind of move together with our clients in order to achieve our goals. And even now, 10 years later, and being part of a larger group of the Castell company group, that still is true. We kind of reinvent ourselves every couple of months, and we go in order to achieve our vision and to be in that spirit, always in beta.
That's lovely. Catharina, I'm very conscious that although, as always, it's fascinating to talk with you, I could talk for hours, you do have a company to run. So maybe I could just draw one last question. If you were pulling out 2 or 3 key headlines from the book that you would encourage me to pass on to students, for example, what would they be?
Well, 2 or 3. Let's say, first of all, we've been talking about many of these points. So first of all, let's say really the rules of competition have changed. In times of digital, companies have to be quicker than ever before, and not only coming up with new ideas for products and services, but really bringing them to the market, and once they are the market, iterating them, improving them, changing them. So it's kind of new rules of competition, I'd say. The second one is that you can answer as a company to these new environments by looking at the principles that make software companies successful, learning from modern software development, from agile development, and asking yourself, what does that mean for my organization that might not be a software company? And lastly, as a third headline, to say, in order to do so, establish an innovation ecosystem and enable collaboration between various stakeholders.
Sounds a pretty good recipe. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And there's some really interesting messages. I'd certainly encourage people to read the book in more detail. But for now, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you.